Okay, it's a couple minutes after. This is Dave Messina. I'd like to get started. Um, let's see, I see Josh, Dan, AJ, Zoe. Missing Stephanie. I'll follow up with her tomorrow. Maybe she's will be with us in a little bit. Wanted to start out with everyone's thanks, in particular Josh and Dan uh, on the response to drones flying over Gatwick Airport. We agreed as a group it would be a good idea to put out a press release, and we talked about things like a drone emergency response team. And we saw that Drones UK did just that. We also XJet Bruce had a couple of posts from down under on this topic. And so we put together a press release. I got it reviewed. Had it reviewed by 3 of our board of director members, and we're ready to issue the release. And then it appears that there were no drones, or was not a drone flying over Gatwick Airport. And so we felt it prudent to not issue the release that would have been in response to a non-event. However, I try to see a positive in things like this, and certainly we had some good lessons learned on putting this press release together. With a core team, we were able to draft a release within several hours. We incorporated quotes from Rotor Riot, and as well as 2 of our board of director members, Jeff Thompson and Tim Nilsson. That required about an additional 24 hours. So unless we put a communications process in place, we can expect to issue a press release which responds to an event within about 3 days of starting the release. To me, that's sufficient at this point. If we find that we are lagging and we need to that it's a critical role of ours, that we feel that rapid and near immediate communication is really important, we can trim this down from certainly from my experience. But it would require that the people who need to review a release understand the process and are able to drop what they're doing and review the release, and then get back to work. Any reactions or thoughts on the whole Gatwick issue, or the lessons that we learned?
I think the biggest thing is and I say this because one of my Sam's dad actually works in cybersecurity for a big company in New York, and anytime something happens there, they, everybody gets a phone call, and right then and there they start dealing with it. And for us, maybe a 3-day turnaround is okay, but I think it's, as we get bigger, that's going to have to speed up to almost near instantaneous reaction, so that we can kind of be ahead of the game in some regards. And not only that, but be ahead of the media as well as best as possible.
Agreed. I tend to agree that as we get a little larger, this is something that we can do more quickly.
Although in this case, not acting quickly kind of saved us because we weren't acting on false information.
Yeah.
Yeah, very correct.
It's a double-edged sword, because that we end up possibly react in the same case. The JU incident was potentially computer generated, and there was a giant knee-jerk reaction to that too. So there's a double-edged sword to having that knee-jerk reaction. That's actually the counterpoint I wanted to bring up, is that it was drone hysteria. Someone reported seeing a drone. Police put up their own drones. More drone sightings were reported, and it turned into an all-out hysteria event. And that's something I feel like that needs to be talked about, because it's a problem. The hysteria for drones now is more real than ever.
Agreed. I think it did heighten the hysteria, and I thought the drone UK commentary was very even-handed, and I thought it was prudent in that it was. I won't say independent of the Gatwick incident, but um, it was able to sustain uh, the fact that there was no event, and I felt our own reaction was right along those lines, which was, we're here to help law enforcement. We're intent on tracking the operator and the drone. And there of course was lots of discussion about, oh, we should volunteer to knock a drone out of the sky, and I think that's not the tack we want to take. But yeah, how to manage this hysteria, that's yeah, a challenge.
That's an overwhelming issue of the whole industry right now, is the drone hysteria, because we went from, I don't know, over the last 2 years, from going from pilots reporting UFOs to essentially every UFO is now a drone. And it's causing problems. Like it's caused the Gatwick incident, and literally to the point where it is now essentially a self-defeating issue. Where we need to be able to do something long-term solution to combat the drone hysteria, because if we don't, that we'll lose the public perception. And if we lose public perception, we're just going to be relegated to a really small hobby. And I don't want to be completely regulated away.
Yeah.
So
go ahead.
Go ahead, Dave.
I was going to say that certainly the idea of a drone emergency response team was absolutely not in my thinking, and I think that was this team's response to, hey, this is something we could do. So I think that's very positive, and I think it is. I'm sorry.
It's good. I think it's good to have the response team.
Yeah, and I'm not suggesting that that's the end of the story, and the totality and what we could do, but I was very pleased that that's something positive, something achievable, and something that hopefully would help shape public opinion. Of course, it would happen slowly.
So one of the things that I'm working on with my well, you'll see it a little later in the meeting, but in my FAA primary collaboration, points, is one of the things is realistic data collection. So partnering with the FAA for realistic and truthful standards for measuring drone activity, and I do drone in quotes, but there's too much speculation, and we need a quick response from the FAA saying this was or was not a drone, and we need to develop what those guidelines are for saying this is what we're going to deal with. And not only that, but an education program for manned aviation pilots on identification of aerial objects, and what that truly means, and the necessity for truth in reporting, and not just calling everything a drone. We're at 20,000 feet and there's a drone here. Well, highly unlikely, but okay. So I think not only do our people need training, but I think manned aviation needs training, and that needs to be evaluated.
Interesting.
Hey guys, hi. I got in a little bit late here, so can someone just catch me up real quick what the starting topic was?
Certainly. The first topic it's in the agenda as well, and so you can, if you're able, Chad, to tap into the agenda. I wanted to characterize our response to the drone or drones flying over Gatwick Airport, and I commented quickly that we decided not to issue a press release, but there was a positive, and that was that we learned what our cycle time was to create a release that was complete with a board of directors quotes in it. And I'd estimate that if we are to issue releases from here forward, it would take us about 3 days to turn around to issue a press release. And I think the consensus is that that's probably adequate for now. But as time goes on, we may need to move more quickly. And we were then talking about, of course, having a little bit, that lag time to develop the release was a bit of a blessing in that, because in that time frame, it happened that there was no drone over Gatwick, so we were saved any embarrassment, but we were prepared. We then started talking about, well, what are some of the things, in as much as there is a significant hysteria about drones in general, what are some of the things that we should be thinking about with regard to FPVFC? And that's we're talking about, certainly the drone emergency response team is one aspect, but not everything. And Josh had a second idea of the notion that potentially working with the FAA on how to do a better sighting of drones, because certainly we see the FAA characterizing a lot of sightings, and by inference, they're probably drones. I welcome.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, that's where I came in.
Okay, I welcome anyone to edit what I've said if I've misstated or omitted anything.
That sounds like a great recap to me. I'd also say that, adding on to what Josh was saying about educating pilots, that ties right into Bruce's last rant video about the pilot, the police helicopter in New Zealand. When they saw a drone, they apparently just went back to their station and just got out of there because they thought the drone was going to take them out of the sky.
That's a problem. That again, the hysteria, and that's a really hard issue to, I think, combat, because once the hysteria has been kind of built up, how do you soothe it? How do we combat that? Because that's been, I feel like, one of the biggest issues for the longest time within our industry is when the smallest event pops up. I could literally think of so many off the top of my head that were hysteria based and not actually based in fact or whatever, just off of, oh no, a drone in a place it shouldn't be, or even in this instance, there was possibly not even a drone. So, I mean.
So I think we've got, I think maybe that our task is, we've got a couple of good ideas we've been thinking about with respect to what's a way to work the process and work our, create programs ourselves that can slowly help improve public impressions. And that's probably a good approach. I added to the list in this agenda down a bit in terms of what are some of the things that we should be doing. FPVFC, work products to the value of our community, and I added in the drone emergency response team, and we should probably, I know Josh will probably have already added in the FAA actions. So maybe that's a way to continue to move this idea forward and also keep it in the front of our minds.
If I could suggest something, and the reason, and thank you for the catch up, Dave. You're always very thorough, and thank you. It caught me up very quickly. The thing that I would recommend that we do is, I get, okay, so here's what I'm responding to. I hear us putting a lot of focus on what's the response next time, how do we respond to things. I'd like to suggest maybe we start really small and pick what's the proactive thing that we're doing. What is the one thing that we can put together that we can see, so we can achieve something as a team. So we can, it's like a crawl before we walk and walk before we run, just so we can have something under our belt that says, we've done this, whether it's an educational initiative or something, because there's a lot of stuff that we all want to do and achieve, but I think there's going to be a lot of value in picking, like, kind of one very narrow focused thing to get done. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, certainly to me. Yeah, yes, it does.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense.
So I guess what I'm saying is, like, if we, and I'm sorry, somebody mentioned earlier, I don't know if it was you, Josh, or Dan, it was something about, an educational initiative. But if we could pick some way to say, okay, well, we're going to focus on, you know, drone safety education, and here's what it will look like, and here's how we know we're done with that phase, and then completing that, and then, that'll be, and I'm sorry if I'm jumping around a little bit, but go way back to flight test. I remember starting out thinking I wanted it to be kind of almost an encyclopedia of exploring, the hobby of RC flight. And I remember day one thinking, okay, the first video, and I just remember thinking it was like this mountain of how to build an encyclopedia is just ridiculous. But before you know it, 2 years later, you look back and you got hundreds of videos. So in this case, what's our first encyclopedia article? What is that first thing? So I'm speaking to it in principle, not on a very specific task, but yeah, so that's my thoughts.
That's helpful. And I think as we look at the 30, 60, 90 action plan, or 30, 60, 90 day action plan, we can pick out some of the short-term items that we can say, okay, here's a focused area. It's an accomplishment and something we can talk about on the website a bit and get it out there.
I do have that ready when we get to that point, Dave.
Sweet. Okay. Okay, if I move on to next topic, and Stephanie will be joining us momentarily. Okay, next topic is the 501c3 approval process. We're getting close. We have, as of 27 December, we are incorporated in the state of Virginia. And as of today, we have an employment identification number, and I have the almost the last pieces of information I need to submit the 1023 easy form to the IRS. I'm hoping to do that tomorrow or Friday.
Hey, Dave, I had a question about that. That doesn't mean we have to file taxes for 4 days in 2018, does it?
That is correct. It is not. It's the submission to the. That's absolutely why we had the 1023 easy moved into January for that reason as well.
Excellent. Thank you.
Just kidding. Okay. So the schedule then. This. Okay. So hopefully this week we start the clock and get a document out to the IRS. The IRS is affected by the partial government shutdown. I'm hoping that this simplified and shorter form, I'm hoping that it's machine read. That hopefully will help us a little bit. And Stephanie, welcome. The agenda is there's a link to it here, and so it's up in the folder that I've been keeping agendas, and it's cleverly named agenda for FPVFC meeting 1/2/19. Okay, probably not. Let's see, we've got looking down at the FPVFC launch under there. Now would be a good time to talk about the 30, 60, 90 day action plan.
Awesome. Let me drop that link into the. I'm gonna drop it into the core chat. Just give me
Okay.
1 second.
Very good.
And there we go. So if you guys can open that up, I'll give you 30 seconds or so to get that open here.
Got it.
But basically what I did, and I'll just kind of describe. So as of right now, we're kind of 30 days before launch. And then, so I did kind of like 30-day pre-launch, and then I did 30-day post-launch and 60-day post-launch. So there's a couple. What's that?
You've done this sort of thing before.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
This is what I do. So basically 30 days before pre-launch, we really need to establish our membership tiers and fees. So we kind of need to come to a general consensus on that, so we can get that kind of mapped out into Stephanie's membership program there. We need to figure out what are going to be the benefits, what are individuals going to get, along with their membership. We need to have our branded and custom swag available on partner sites, at least for the get-go. Whether that's the Rotor Riot store, I know we've talked about that in the past. We need to repush interest in the organization. We need to do some public relations, some community building, perhaps some education outreach, and then we need to kind of formulate a public release on going live and get people to join the organization once we are live. 30 days post-launch, it'd be a good deal to get the web store up and running, and I'm kind of going to quickly go through this. Need to start establishing protocols and guidelines for the drone emergency response team and what that's going to look like. And I kind of plugged in a couple key points, perhaps search and rescue, illegal flight assistance, and first responder assistance. Let's see, we need to get the drone wiki kind of built out more so than it is. We need to start establishing relations to the community. I know we talked about our standards program and finding a champion for that. We need to partner with all our affiliates throughout the hobby and kind of bring together everybody under one roof as much as possible. Communication with the FAA on becoming a CBO, and right below that you'll see kind of my beginnings on the key collaboration points, but I have a whole nother document describing each one of those and what we need to accomplish for those. And we need to start planning and establishing a path for the growth of the organization and what the responsibilities of different people will be. 60 days protocols for the published protocols and identify members for the drone emergency response team. We need to, well, it's something we can discuss, but I know we've talked about it in the past, planning for a mobile app for the organization, and a couple key points there on what needs to be integrated within that app, and possibly more or less, it's all up for discussion. STEAM education resources, and what are we going to do for FPV FC community events? Are we going to partner? Are we going to host our own? What's that going to look like? And finalize collaboration points with the FAA and begin working with them as much as possible. So that's kind of my big rundown there. If stuff needs to be added or taken away, we can definitely do that. Yeah, I think it's pretty hefty as it is right now. So
this is really, really good. Really and very helpful. Thank you for the energy as we step. So the pre 30 days prior to launch, T-minus 30, membership tiers, get the website going, make sure that we have swag going, and I think our decision was use Teespring. So that to me is right on the nose, and think through what it is that we're going to do when we go live. As I scan through, and this is so helpful to see this and not having written it, and so second set of eyes. This is really helpful.
It's completely editable, so
the
link I gave is editable. So if we need to add or remove things or move things around, we can definitely do that.
Great. The what I'm thinking of is along the lines of what are some of the things that we want to focus on right away, so that we can say, okay, we've got, we can sell you a T-shirt and a hat, and we mean well, but what do we, so what have you done for me lately? The answer, a professor of mine kept saying, well, that's very interesting, Messina. That's a very good analysis, but so what? And we want to answer that question. So what?
So part of that so what for me would be talking to the community about what our plans are for collaborating with the FAA, and we can, these are the points we're choosing that we're going to focus on first. And to be honest, and I have to thank AJ, honestly, I went through his breakdown of the upcoming deadlines for the FAA and what they need to do with the new thing. And that's where I picked a bunch of these from. I added a couple of stuff for myself, what I thought, we should focus on. But we need to start talking about those things, and we need to get that out there and saying these are the items that we plan on collaborating with the FAA on, and this is what we think. And honestly, that probably needs to be part of the launch public release. This is what we plan on doing. This is where your money will be going, that kind of thing.
Yeah, Dave, and I think that's what you just brought up was kind of what I jumped ahead on my earlier statements, and I apologize for jumping too far ahead. But yeah, so if we were a fire department, the thing that we do that we're experts at are fighting fires, and everything we have here currently and what we're talking about is talking about selling, shirts with the fire department logo and having staff and creating administrative and and all this stuff. But what is that thing we're an expert at, and how do we prove it? And that's what I would like to see us all agree upon. And of course we have lots of ideas, but I would like us to put a high priority on completing and proving at least one of those things before we get too far down the road. And I'm sorry if I'm having a hard time articulating this, but I'm saying if that thing is we are experts in information, then again, we need to find how do we execute that. I don't think any of us want to just be experts in talking to people. We want to be able to accomplish something with that speech or the educational materials or something. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. And it's and I think to me, looking through the list on the 30-day T plus 30, the two areas, the one that is our reason for existence, I would assert, is the collaboration with the FAA. And if we can, we probably need to be a little vague outwardly initially on these are some of the areas where want to work with the FAA on, and then home in on a couple of where we get traction with the FAA, we focus on those, and then drive those to completion. And then in the background, and I would suggest, I agree, completely uninteresting to the community is the minutia of putting the 501c3 together. It's good that someone might be interested that okay, they're serious, they did it, but that's about it. It should take about 5 seconds.
Well, but I think even that maybe we're glossing over, coming up with the guidelines, that are recognized. I mean, that's actually a big task there, even though we, have started that, getting those recognized, I think is probably the longer term. I mean, I honestly, my guess is that's probably not going to happen any sooner than a year. But who knows?
Yeah, that can be they can be our guidelines, and then if we were able to gain agreement with the FAA that we're a CBO, the first thing they would ask us is, where are your guidelines? And then then that takes on a much it formalizes the guidelines, and then hopefully we would be working on things like Josh has. The first one is a operator test development and implementation. I mean, that's that to me is awesome, because we know the AMA is going to be focused primarily on fixed wing activities. So it's ours to focus on FPV.
Yeah, actually, maybe something prior to that would be getting a reputable organization to adopt our guidelines. I think that could be, something that can be completed. If there is an existing organization, it could be a racing league, it could be, something along those lines, an official company or organization that officially says, "Hey, we are adopting these as our guidelines." I think that could be a major step forward.
Yeah, I think that's that's something I meant to put in here, and I kind of did, but I didn't kind of elaborate on it, is getting something like, and I'm just throwing out examples, multi-GP to adopt our guidelines, and as opposed to requiring an AMA membership, switch that around and saying, hey, have an AMA or a FPVFC membership, and you fly under these guidelines while at our events, kind of thing. And I mean, that would be huge for us.
Yeah, I don't want to. I don't want that to be minimized. I think that would be a big deal, and it shows purpose, it shows completion, and then we're immediately adding value, to the community. And I want to treat this like like a startup, and the things that I want to be careful of, because we're an organization, or eventually a nonprofit, or how. I don't want to get stuck in that cycle of busy work, like doing stuff to feel important rather than actually, making a change and making a difference. And I'm not saying anybody has that intent. I'm just saying, like, even in my own company, we tend to do that, where you just get focused on getting, some of the prep work done or the support work, but then we lose focus sometimes on, hey, why are we doing it? And that's what you guys brought up earlier. What's the why?
Completely agree. Thank you, Chad.
Thank you.
That said, under the covers, we will focus on a fair amount of the details, because there is a fair amount of rigor required in running a nonprofit. So I'm with you completely on the outward appearance. The duck on the pond syndrome is our feet are going to be paddling pretty quickly below the surface.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's already. I mean, I can't believe the amount of work that gets done with with this volunteer team. This is amazing.
Okay.
Can I interject something about the multi-GP thing?
Yeah.
We can always communicate with them about possibly accepting us or adopting some of our guidelines. But as far as us being their representation, I need to sneakily find out how long their contract is with the AMA. I need to put some feelers out there, because they're bed mates, and
multi-GP and AMA.
Yes.
Okay.
All multi-GP events are held at AMA fields, and their big race at the end of the year is held at AMA headquarters
in Muncie.
So,
yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So it's a good.
AMA can provide them with places to race.
Right.
So kind of why it's a good fit. But,
yeah, and racing. I'd love to. Maybe if not racing, maybe it's I don't even know if they exist. If there are chapters or groups who fly cinematic drones, to me that might be a better partnership than a racing organization. I know that racers pick up and set up in a variety of areas, but um, multi-GP going to AMA designated fields is a great idea for them, but it's it's antithetical to what we are trying to accomplish to gain and establish rights outside of designated areas.
I
think
assume the AMA partnership has a lot to do with insurance reasons as well.
absolutely, yes.
That's very likely. Good
Therein
point.
lies my headache.
Yeah. Josh, I edited and added in right underneath the 30-day post. I imagine you were watching as I was typing in, adding to your document.
Feel free. That's what it's there for.
Okay. All right. This is okay. Add to drive. Okay. Excellent. I now have a link.
I think what would
Small.
be a good move for us would have an endorsement by MultiGP. Like that will probably be the extent of what we can do with them right now, and that has a lot of reach. Has a lot more reach than we realize.
Great minds. I wrote on the notes gain endorsement / adoption of guidelines.
Yes.
Yep. Good. Good.
And even though we're focused on the United States, there's probably a lot of organizations around the world that we could maybe reach out to and get endorsements or get our safety guidelines out to them as well.
There
Love
are
that.
several people that have reached out to me as far as what can I do to help, and then how we can start this partnership now, even though you're not ready to be over here, but we're on board and we're behind you. What can I do now? So the growth is there already.
Great idea.
And I'm sure there's a lot of people near London that are very worried about their future as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Good. Boy, I'm liking this. Okay, so first area of focus, guidelines. Then that to me is and then probably the second is FAA something. How do we, something tangible, collaborating with the FAA. And certainly I keep thinking of the drone emergency response team as, while that could be extremely useful and valuable to the community and to folks outside of the community in the U.S., that's the sizzle, and that could be the sizzle that sells the steak.
So on that note, can I jump into these collaboration points real quick, Dave?
Absolutely, please.
All right, I'm going to drop a link to that. And mind you, this is very rough, and I understand some of the language is harsh, but it was more of getting my ideas out than fine-tuning it so far. So let me drop that in there.
Okay. Okay.
So as you start to go through this, obviously I broke it down in the 30, 60, 90, but operator knowledge test development and implementation. So the FAA has kind of, they haven't decided how this is going to happen, but they've made room for it to be administered by a CBO, as most of you probably know. So if we can help develop that and create a test that seeks information relevant to the hobby as opposed to stuff that a full-scale pilot would need, and keep it simple. And we need to collaborate on what the age ranges are going to be. Is there a cutoff? Can pilots under the age of 12 not need to take the test? If they do need to take the test, how do we bring that level of knowledge down to that level so that they can pass that test? So those are some of the things we need to talk about there. One of the upcoming points is identification of no-fly zones, and I think we definitely need to be involved with that to make sure that we're not or that the FAA and its affiliates aren't trying to minimize the airspace that we can fly in too much. We all understand that there's public infrastructure and sporting events and that kind of thing, but beyond that, we want to keep that down, obviously, as much to a minimum as we can, so that we can preserve the airspace, and that stands true to our mission straight off the bat. Flight limitations, maximum speed, altitude, beyond visual line of sight, we kind of want to be involved with that. Realistic data collection, partner with them on a way to realistically and truthfully determine standards. Too much speculation happening. Education program for commercial and private pilots that helps with identification of aerial objects. Official press releases from the FAA with hard evidence, without speculation, and that's key to keeping the bad press off our hobby. UAS privacy review. Obviously, there's a lot of big stink about where we can fly, where we can't fly. I mean, there's been several instances I've seen just on Facebook alone of drones getting shot down. I think last week there was one shot down in Texas again, over privacy concerns, and it's a big deal. We need to establish, what that is and what the rules are for that. Educational programs for the community and its partners in the manned aviation community. It'll lead to a general understanding without all the confusion of misinformation, and that's something that Chad talked about right from the beginning. We need to minimize the misinformation, get everybody on the same page, understanding what the regulations are, how it applies to them, and we've done a lot of that work already with the FAQ and stuff like that, and that'll have to continually be updated. But we need to be on the forefront of, kind of, if you think about it, FAA's Know Before You Fly campaign. It's great for the merits of what it stands for right now, but it doesn't do enough. It doesn't do enough to educate people. There's a lot of misinformation. The FAA themselves put out misinformation. So, we need to lock that down. Responding to public safety threats. This is kind of where the drone emergency response team comes in. Development of guidelines and standards for identification of public safety threats involving a UAS and how best to respond to those. And we definitely need to key in on safety of law enforcement officers, the operator of that drone, and the general public. Public UAS access to special use airspace, and this boils down to the public, the general public, being able to help first responders and emergency personnel. What's the path to that? Is there some kind of licensing that needs to happen or something like that? And enforcement of FAA regulations and law enforcement education. Right now, I don't think many law enforcement officers, unless they're involved in the hobby, understand what their job is in regards to upholding the laws for UAS. And I think that if we can create an educational program for law enforcement and teach them how to respond to these and teach them what they need to respond to, would be key for making sure everybody's on an equal footing and that people aren't being harassed unnecessarily, or people aren't getting away with what they shouldn't be getting away with. That there's got to be some kind of middle ground. So those are kind of the key points that I thought of. If anybody else thinks of more, again, this is editable, throw them in there. Let's talk about it.
That's a great list. There are a number of these that I recognize as aligning with activities that the FAA has talked about and that AJ put together with dates. Are these all aligned like that, or it's some are and some are not?
Most come from that list. Some of them are not. So like realistic data collection, it's not on there. Neither is law enforcement education. That's not on there either. But most of them are. And
with those that are, is it a date sequence list or is it priority sequence? It's date sequence.
No, it's date sequence.
You rock. That's that's exactly how I would have done it. Okay, I love that. So to me, that's important from the perspective of stating the obvious, but why would I have done it that way? Because we need to try to capture the FAA in this sequence. And if we can gain their trust and interest at the beginning, then that'll raise our probability that we'll be able to collaborate on the activities later down the list. And if we went, if we started, at the bottom of the list, and they were like, no, as AJ has pointed out, this is going to be a multi-year endeavor with the FAA. So I'm loving this. Yeah, I really, yeah. Yep. To me, so guidelines at 1, 2, operator knowledge test and development. I like that. So other comments, other reactions. And I see Josh and me in this document. I have a hunch that some other folks are not able or didn't see the link that to this document that that Josh put down.
I'm in there.
I'll be perfectly honest. My husband has been off since last Friday, and I just have done nothing but hang out with him because we actually have time. So
No. It's just it's a rather critical to have time with your spouse. So no laments. I just was hoping that you could see what Josh put in there just moments ago.
Oh, it's moments ago. Cool. Then I'm not that far behind.
Nope.
Yay.
It looks great, Josh. Both documents, both the timelines and the primary collaboration. That's a good.
Thank you, AJ. Thank you for all the work you did on the front side of that too. That definitely helped.
Yeah, no problem.
Cool. Dan, any thoughts?
No, it all looks great.
Okay, and Zoe, we know you're driving or in a car, so we understand that you can't see the document. Josh did a good job of going through it verbally, and I'm sure that was a little hard to catch. So we welcome comments once you've landed.
Yeah, no, he went over a lot. It sounded like he did a lot of work. So thanks for all the legwork you did on that. It's amazing.
Great.
I think we're on track as well. I'm muted and I'm on my phone, so I don't know if it shows that I'm in the document or not.
Yeah, it can't. It doesn't. Interestingly enough, maybe if I refresh, it will. Do 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 do.
Oh, I saw the anonymous chinchilla disappeared, and now an anonymous chameleon is back.
Yeah, I've got an anonymous rhino. I think that happens when you create an open link to a document. All right, so I'm looking. Let's see. I would like to spend the remaining couple minutes on anything else as well, and then circle back to the guidelines and maybe some brainstorming about how we approach that. So, is there around the room? Are there any anything that folks want to bring up? Dan?
No, I don't think I've got anything new. Hopefully, we're providing Zoe with some entertainment for her long drive.
Absolutely, I hope so. AJ?
No, sir.
Okay, Stephanie.
I'm getting with you tomorrow, and we're gonna get this Teespring thing squared away.
Sweet.
When are you available so I can write it down and be ready?
Let's see. I have a couple of calls. Let me quick check. That would be efficient.
Because I'm open all day.
I have a 9 to 11. This is Eastern, and I have looks like a 12 to 1, and that's it. So any time other than that, and those times I gave you were Eastern.
Okay. Anytime after 1 your time, just let me know.
Okay, will do. Chad, I was stalling there if there was anything else that you wanted to add.
No, I think I'm good. I think it's just been weighing on me. I want to make sure that we're, that we prove that core thing that we do, our product, so to speak.
Yep. Yep. So to that end, our guidelines are they're written up on a website, right? So if I say fpvfc.com, guidelines under safety. All right, so we've got maybe the home, about us, resources, and safety. So maybe let's not ask Dan to move this just yet, but every list is an ordered list. So maybe we want to alter the location of the guidelines if that's one of the things that we're going to come out with right away. Okay. Oh my gosh, look at this. And the PDF, bang, it comes right up. All right.
Yes, I'm feeling really good about the website.
Yeah.
Ditto that.
Yeah. So and Chad is not an easy marker on things like websites. So thank you all. So organizations. Let's how about some little bit of brainstorming on who do we want to know about, who do we want to let know about the guidelines? And so maybe first it's who's the audience that we want to say, hey, we've got these guidelines and this is important. And so certainly we would want to go to that audience with any endorsements and adoption that we are able to get from organizations, but who are we speaking to? I think it's the FPV community in the United States.
Yes.
Is there a better or more refined way to characterize that?
Honestly, I think that there really isn't. I think that the general audience is going to be, your average flyers, and making sure that they're staying within these guidelines in order to stay legal. And not only that, but staying within these guidelines to make sure that we're not invoking additional, for lack of a better word, sanctions on what we can and can't do. But I think from a slightly tighter perspective, we definitely need to partner with any and all professional organizations or anybody that's hosting, fly-ins or races or freestyle events, that these are the guidelines that they should operate under in order to, make sure that they're doing things the right way, and in order to build those relationships with the community. And that may, eventually, or even right off the bat, necessitate us meeting with these people or going to events or something like that to kind of explain these things and why they need to follow these versus somebody else's. So because I don't think we're doing this in a vacuum. I think that there's other organizations, now that the door's open, that are going to be pushing for CBOs and stuff like that. So we need to show the value of our guidelines, of our operation, of our organization, to the community and to these event holders.
So one of the things that's interesting, so I've been taking notes as you were talking. Owners and managers of fly-ins and events, and we want to encourage the people hosting or putting on those events to adopt the guidelines. And so from there, I was thinking, well, who are they? And we talked about the racing bodies, and then there's it's interesting that a cinematic drone certainly, I think that's good that anyone flying a cinematic drone is enthusiastic about these guidelines, and it probably could help spread the word, and also potentially embrace the guidelines. And I think that the cinematic drone activity tends to be a lone wolf activity, whereas fly-ins, events, fun flies are by their very nature a group activity and critical that there are guidelines and it's documented and there is some rigor. When you're off on alone, it's adhering to the guidelines is a matter of pride, and it's very important because it's how you are viewed by the public. And so maybe there are like there's a DJI official Facebook page, and maybe that organization is aware of either groups or individuals, and it's that says maybe there are 107 educators that would embrace this. I was also thinking of on a who cares and who are the stakeholders, and immediately I was thinking of the retailers. And so if it's a Get FPV, a Race Day Quad, an RM, or a Ready-Made RC, Healy Pro, any of the retailers across the country have a big vested interest in this, because if the rights of FPV freestyle are curtailed, then these folks can expect their businesses to also reduce. So that we might ask some of the retailers to endorse this, embrace it, and help publicize it. So that's another part of the overall audience.
One of the ideas that came up several months ago was that we partner with those retailers and ask them to include our safety guidelines in their packaging, or maybe we develop like a business card size breakdown of these, or something like that they can just toss in the box, and when they ship out something, you get a card with the FPVFC safety guidelines or something like that. Does that make sense?
It does, completely. Yep.
Actually,
that's brilliant.
What would be good is Rotor Riot, and we have our Hype Train products in our retail store. You essentially sell this to me and I'll tell you what's wrong with it. So if you can get me excited about doing this stuff, then other people are going to get excited about it. And obviously Tim's on the board, so let's talk to him and say what makes this optimal. Because for me, it's I look at people as you have very little time to capture their attention, and once you have it, you will only retain it for very little time unless you can get them to the next level of depth before losing them. So to me it would be, okay, well, this, first off, it's not very fun. You want to sell me a set of rules, and forgive me, I'm playing devil's advocate here. So I'm jumping to the other side. So why would my customers care or want this?
I think that's a good question, and I think the reason that the Get FPV customers want this is, by and large, they want to operate within the law, and they want to know how what's acceptable, safe flight. So I think there's good value to the customer.
So okay, so that's that addresses the fear side. Now and it's possible, how do we address the other side? How do we optimize the fun? How do we how does my interaction with FPVFC somehow enhance my experience, so I'm not just staying out of jail, but I'm having more fun?
We
need stickers. How do we get
Well,
the how do we get the
I think-
guidelines on some stickers?
I think honestly that if you look at our guidelines and compare them side by side with the AMA, I would say that as a general rule, ours are less stringent. They are developed in a way to maintain the fun aspect of the hobby, but not only that, to garner the enjoyment of the hobby. And we're not being overly restrictive. We're saying, this is what you do to stay safe, have fun, and so I think that's a big selling point, is the less restrictive atmosphere of our guidelines versus others.
Well, yeah, and I think that's still part of it, but that's still like it's loosening the reins. But I'm saying, what can we do that says, I almost think if there were some factoids like right up front, did you know if and I'm trying to think of an actual example, but did you know if you do this thing, you can extend the life of your battery? Okay, battery health. You know what I mean? If you properly store your batteries, they will last you 5 times longer, something like that. And get this and more information from FPVFC. Something like that is like, oh wow, so now we're adding value. Now it's not a restrictive, don't do this, don't do that, and we'll be nice about it. It's more, hey, the information we're having will not only keep you safe, it'll help you maximize your investment. It'll help you have more fun.
So do we want to work? Okay. Do we want to work on a hook for FPVFC, or do we want to focus on the guidelines?
I think we can do both at the same time. I mean, I think that it's almost like the development of a PR campaign. So we've got the foundation done. We just need to provide the. I get where Chad's coming from. We need to provide the fun. So and it could be just a development of taking information for the new or the mid-grade pilot and saying like the battery health thing, or hey, a proper tune on your quad will prevent your motors from burning up, or make sure you're matching the ESC size to your motors and your battery, or whatever the case may be. But those general little and then and then on the flip side of that card, you could have the top 3 safety guidelines, and to see the rest, go to fpvfca.com or something like that, or something like that.
And could we think of something that could maybe go into something like a quad box? I don't know, something fun or interesting we could get in there, but that would be great.
Absolutely.
And the other thing that I was, it kind of tags on to that, is think about, these are exploding right now. They're getting very popular, but since we released our game controller in Best Buy, people are using them with like the Tello and the Mambo, the Parrot Mambo and the Rise Tello. And so these little $80 to $100 drones that are fairly stabilized. Most people are flying them indoors. So you might say, well, indoors doesn't matter because it's not regulated, but it can matter. We could have the 5 best tips for flying indoors, something like that, because then it gets people integrated early. Because most likely if they're buying that, there's a big chance that they're going to step up eventually, or they're going to get something bigger, or eventually they're going to go outside, and then and if they've already gotten some useful information or guidelines from us that have helped them at that stage, then they'll grow with us.
Absolutely, totally get where you're coming from.
Hey Dan, there's probably an analogy in your world of mountain biking, and so I'm looking at where's the fun. And so to me, as a motorcyclist, the fun is my motorcycle is meticulously maintained, and I am absolutely an all gear all the time guy, so that I'm trying to optimize, and I never ever 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 drink when I ride. So I'm trying to optimize the safety so that when I'm riding, I can have the best experience possible. And so where's the fun, and what's the how do from a looking at this through the lens of a mountain biker, what's attractive in guidelines, tips, what would pull you in the bicycle world that we could utilize here?
Yeah, that's a good question. Our mission is quite similar to what the International Mountain Biking Association's mission is. They're really focused on creating fun, places for people to go and getting permission, kind of like how we're getting permission to fly in the airspace. But I can't really think of exactly.
So is it destination? Is it experience? Yeah. Is it the experience? Is it?
It's a lot about creating destinations for people to go. You explained is very different. As a bike mechanic, I'm sort of like a car mechanic. My bike is the one that's never tuned or in good condition. I just ride it as it is. Everybody else's are fixed, but not mine.
Cobbler's child. That's funny.
Not me personally, but a lot of other people.
Bikes as well.
Say again?
He's probably working on other people's bikes as well. That happens to me when we have group rides. You wouldn't believe it.
You got to make sure everyone else is working and yours isn't.
Right.
For example, my bike I rode yesterday, the rear brake doesn't work at all, and it's fine that way.
Okay. All right. So
and actually, drinking happens to be a big part of mountain biking. Not for me personally, but a lot of people go on rides and drink afterwards.
Come on. We can do it.
All right. So this is good from a perspective of so we've got the guidelines written, and then there's some ideas here that do we what's the do we shrink it, streamline it, make it a couple of clever points with a QR code that goes on a business card size that we can drop in packaging from retailers, that we can drop in quad boxes, as well as where's the hook for FPV, where we're going to bring in the notion of the guidelines. So I don't have the solution, but I've been taking notes on the discussion. I'll write it up and
let me put some brainstorming in it myself and see what I can come up with there.
Yeah, there's some really, I like the thoughts are great. I love the path we're going on.
Yeah, I think the idea is, if let's use boating, nobody gets excited about buying life preservers. You know what I mean? They're going to spend $20,000 on the boat and $15 on the life preserver. So it's, how do you get them to want to buy it? Well, you know what they've been doing? They make them more colorful. They make them stylish, and so it's functional and helpful.
There's a recurring theme in what you're saying, Chad, and that is stay away from the FUD. And so fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And so, don't be heavy-handed and, oh my gosh, you're going to get arrested. Or, it's like, no. This is the way to optimize your good time. And so it's
because
that's the focus.
Right. And you can that's really just it. It's not. I don't want to start doing campaigns where we're scaring people into using our product in a sense.
Oh, absolutely not.
I'd very much like it to be, and not feeling like the medicine that you have to take, but if you do these things, you are going to optimize your experience.
Yeah,
we're a little bit more like the DNR in that scenario, where we're saying, hey, if you want nice clean lakes, you don't want them infested with invasive species, here are the things you need to do to take care of your environment so you can enjoy it.
Yes, absolutely.
Yep.
We're like vitamins.
Well, I think it more like, hey, you want to come zip line with me. It's awesome. It's a great experience. Oh, by the way, when you zip line, you're gonna need a helmet.
I like it. FPVFC, the vitamins of the drone industry.
Oh, jeez.
Now that could go on a stick.
You
All
know,
right, I'm done with stickers.
it's funny that you say that because I think, one of the companies that really, and this was when I was new to the hobby, was oh crap. Now I can't even think of it. It's a Canadian company. They put little statements on their stickers like these are the drones you're looking for, or FPV junkie, or something like that. Oh, Rotor Geeks, that's who I was thinking of. And I think something like that just it's eye catching, and it's
Yeah, take off of these are not the droids you're looking for. It's clever.
yeah. So
Mhm.
something like that, that really can kind of grab somebody's attention and hold it for a couple seconds.
Mhm.
Well, yeah, and it doesn't seem so stifling or, stick in the mud.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Good. Well, I've gone 11, 12 minutes over. And anything else from around the room? I'd like to wrap it up here. I think this has been superb.
The only thing I have is that going back to the 30/60/90,
Yeah, we
we
need to
really
work
need
on that.
yeah, like membership tiers and that kind of stuff. We really need to kind of get that nailed down. I don't know if we want to do a secondary meeting, sometime in the next 30 days to kind of hammer that out. But
Yes.
but
Yes.
yeah, I think that's going to be that's basic stuff that we got to get done. So
I'll take the to-do to set solicit some time, and we'll schedule some time for that.
sounds good.
All right. Anything else from around the room? All right. Great stuff.
Awesome job, everyone. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you. This is great. And we'll be talking to you online, and you'll be hearing from me about request for some time on 30/60/90 specifics. All right. Have a good evening, everyone. Adjourn this meeting. Take care.
Night, everybody.
Everybody.
All right, good work.
Bye. Thanks.